This episode is brought to you by Peacock. The new Peacock original documentary, Matthew Perry, A Hollywood Tragedy, dives deep into the beloved actor's rise to fame and his tragic death. 5 people, including Perry's personal assistant, 2 medical doctors, and an alleged Hollywood drug dealer known as the Ketamine Queen, were charged with conspiracy to illegally provide Perry with the ketamine. Explore the details of the case in this heartbreaking special, streaming now only on Peacock.
At T-Mobile, our critical mission is providing unparalleled 5G coverage for when connectivity is mission critical. Introducing T-Priority, America's best 5G network experience for first responders, even in times of congestion. More capacity, faster speeds, better coverage. T-Priority from T-Mobile, built for tomorrow's emergencies, ready today. Discover more at t-priority.com.
For qualifying organizations on eligible rate plans, coverage not available in some areas and may be impacted by emergencies.
Emotions take merely seconds in our brains chemically, but we can hold on to them for years.
Oh, I believe that. Yeah.
Right? We can hold on to them for years. And when we're able to actually feel them in our bodies, in our nervous systems, they release, right? They don't stay. We don't put them in a box, lock it, and throw away the key.
Right.
We
gone
feel
forever.
it, we synthesize it, it's gone, right?
Yeah.
And then it's actually going to go, and it takes a lot less energy.
Welcome to a bonus episode of DNA Surprises. In this episode, I'm joined by Lindsay Johnson, a registered nurse, board-certified nurse coach, and integrative health coach who cares for the caregiver through stress, burnout, and trauma healing. She utilizes various methodologies in her practice, including mindful listening, transformative coaching, somatic experience and trauma healing, mindfulness, heart math, and gentle accountability. Lindsay helps her clients reconnect to themselves and their bodies, become more aware and mindful of their coping mechanisms, access their courage and inner wisdom, and shed old habits in order to make way for more self-compassion and love. Lindsay will be facilitating a session called Let It Rain, Recognize, Allow, Investigate, and Nurture at the DNA Surprise Retreat. In this episode, we talk about what rain is, why self-compassion is so important, and how we can come home to ourselves. I really enjoyed this conversation and Lindsay's wisdom. Self-compassion can often be one of the more difficult components of the DNA Surprise journey, so I hope that you find this as valuable as I did. Today, I am joined for a very special bonus episode with Lindsay, and she is an integrative health coach who will be facilitating a session on self-compassion at the DNA Surprise Retreat. Welcome, Lindsay.
Hi, Alexis. Thanks for having me.
So to just get started, can you tell listeners a little bit about your background and how you got into the work that you do?
Yeah. So I am a board-certified nurse coach and a somatic experiencing practitioner. And I started my career out as an ICU nurse about 14 years ago. I guess that's probably around what I'm at. And I got burned out within around 6 years of being at the bedside. And so after a few more years, I figured out where I needed to be. And I fell into this coaching role and helping people on their road to more health and wellness. And then I found that there was a lot of things that were really getting in the way of people finding health and wellness. And that had to do with stress and burnout and trauma. And so these days I help people with stress, burnout, and trauma deal with their nervous systems and heal their nervous systems so that they can achieve the health and well-being that they truly desire and deserve.
Oh, that's such a great description of what led you to this place, and definitely resonates, I think, for people who have experienced DNA surprises, because for so many of us, it is a trauma. One of the things on your website that really drew me to you is that you have a note about how we can come home to ourselves. And that really resonated with me in my DNA surprise journey. The fact that my identity has changed so much, and so many of the people that I've spoken to have experienced the same thing. So can you describe what you mean when you say come home to ourselves?
Yeah, I love that that spoke to you. It clearly is a meaningful part of my own life, and I think that's meaningful for a lot of people. I think that coming home to ourselves is really around finding who we are at the core of us as human beings. Two of my mentors in the somatic experiencing world described this as maybe our essence, right? Our essence of who we are. Another mentor has this big diamond in her office, and it's like a faux diamond with all the facets all around, and she will hold it up and say, hey, look, these are all of the facets of who you are on this side, and you can't even see the ones that are on the other side of this. And so we are so complex as people. We are a special collection of temperaments and genetics and life experiences, and we are not just one thing. We are a collection of things. And life can often pull us away from this, right? Our experiences, any sort of nervous system trauma or simply conditioning. And it takes us away from that authenticity, essentially. What I really do in my practice is help people get more in touch with their full human experience. Sometimes we can be so limited with what we allow ourselves to feel and to experience, or we think that calm and peaceful is the only thing that we're allowed to ever feel. But that's just not true, right? We have so many things that we can be, so many things that we can experience. And it's all rooted in a sense of safety. And so when we are able to feel safe with ourselves, that's when we're able to come home.
Oh, I love that diamond analogy because it's so true. I always say, my DNA surprise is something that happened to me. It's one piece of me, but it's not all of me. I'm all these other things. I'm a mom, I'm a friend, I'm a wife. And I think when we first have our DNA surprises, they're so all-encompassing. And so that idea of returning to all of the other things that we are is really special.
Yeah, it could rock your identity.
Yes, for sure. When we talk about coming home to ourselves and processing these traumas, where does self-compassion come into play?
It's pretty integral. I say that only because I think that you need safety as sort of a precursor to that self-compassion. But that being said, it's really a necessary component of allowing us to be who we are. Things like toxic shame, right? The shame that's not actually supposed to be there around emotions or not feeling good enough, it can take us away from that essence that I was talking about before. When our nervous system neurocepts danger, right? When our nervous system just senses that there's danger, not consciously, shame can end up being a protective response, right? We go into that sense of I'm not enough. All of that can really get in the way, but it's also protective. So I don't remember where I heard this from, but it was in Becky Kennedy's Good Inside. She said something to the effect of, my surroundings can't be awful, so I must be awful, right? As children, it's intensely horrific to imagine that my surroundings are awful, so I must be the bad one. And so we sort of take that on as we grow older, and self-compassion becomes just a little bit more hard to come by. And so self-compassion ends up being a practice, I think. It's not something that comes naturally to, I think, most of us in our society, right? And so it becomes a practice.
Oh, that is so interesting, because I think so many of the people in the DNA surprise community grow up feeling out of place in their homes, in their families, feeling like something's off, and sometimes being the black sheep of the family. And all of those things are so tied to shame, as well as just the secrecy and all of that around, learning the truth. And there's shame for our parents. There's a lot of shame, I think, just involved in the DNA surprise world generally.
Yeah. And so self-compassion is just one of those things that is necessary for us to be able to have our full human experience that I was talking about. And that it's such an important part of that experience, I think, for people.
So you touched on somatic experiencing, and I've heard about this a few times over the last couple of years, but I don't know a ton about it. And I know that that's not necessarily what we're going to be covering in the retreat, but can you share more about that?
Yes. So somatic experiencing is a method of nervous system healing, mostly for trauma. I liken it to strengthening your nervous system like you would working out, right? If you're doing some strength training, you're building muscle. And I liken it to building your nervous system muscles. We all have a window of tolerance, essentially, of how much stress that we can manage and handle, right? And sometimes we are given too much stress and we cannot handle it. And we end up getting stuck in activation or freeze. And when we get stuck, we're not really able to be present with ourselves and the people around us. And we don't really have a full experience of our lives, right? We can't access joy and safety. And so somatic experiencing allows us to get kind of in touch with our bodies and our experiences as a whole, but it's really around our bodies, thus the word somatic in that phrase. And it allows us to deactivate and teaches our system to deactivate more. And this comes from the teachings of Peter Levine. If you've ever heard of Waking the Tiger, this is all his work.
Really interesting. Now, your session at the retreat, like we said, it's focused on self-compassion. But when we talked about what specifically you wanted to cover, you were instantly just flowing with ideas and we're super excited about the topic. And one of the things that you brought up was rain. And I'd never heard of it before. But once you explained it to me, I thought, oh my gosh, yes, this is absolutely part of the retreat. This is how we need to process. So can you talk a little bit about what RAIN is and how it relates to self-compassion?
Yes. So RAIN is an acronym that I learned years ago. I was introduced to this from Tara Brach, is one of those big names out there that talks about RAIN. And she's a Buddhist meditation teacher and psychologist. And she talks a lot about mindfulness. And I really do a lot of mindfulness around like embodied mindfulness in my work.
Can you explain what that is?
Great question. So embodied mindfulness, really understanding what's happening in your experience, emotionally, maybe visually, in your head, visually, thoughts, but also what's happening in your bodies. So what's actually happening in our bodies when we're having an activated nervous system response, right? That sort of thing. So I don't really teach meditation, but it's a different sort of mindfulness of being present with yourself. So Tara Brach talks about mindfulness being the two wings of a bird. The first wing of the bird is awareness, and the second wing is compassion, so self-compassion. And so RAIN is an acronym that essentially will take you through that method of mindful self-compassion. And so the first letter is R, and that stands for recognize. And so we have a chance to recognize what's happening for us. We get this wild news about, oh my goodness, I have something that I was not expecting to happen. What is happening for me in my experience, in my body, in my emotions? Naming those. And then A is allow, right? How often is that sort of the most difficult thing for us to do as human beings? Allowing that to be there, something that's horrifically difficult, and just allowing that to be present. And then investigation. And I don't mean investigation like overthinking everything. Like this is why I think this way. And it's because my mom did this when I was a kid. And I don't even mean that. I mean really noticing what it's like to be in that experience. If I'm feeling intense grief, what does the grief feel like right now in my body? Can I really just figure out what that's like? And what do I need in this moment, right? What do I need to hear? What do I need from maybe a partner? What do I need to do for myself? What sort of self-care practice do I need? And then nurture. how can I give that to myself? How can I nurture myself in this moment and really give myself what that piece of me needs right now? And so I love this practice because it's so very linked to the somatic experiencing work that I do, and just really takes into account how we respond to the world, to our experiences, how we think, feel, behave. And I'm just really excited to share this with your crowd.
This episode is brought to you by Honda. Introducing the all-new, all-terrain Honda Passport Trail Sport, the most off-road capable Honda Passport Honda has ever dreamt up. The Passport features increased ground clearance, roof rails on all trims, and available specially developed all-terrain tires. And you'll stay comfortable with tri-zone climate control and available features like heated and ventilated front seats and a panoramic moonroof. Learn more at honda.com/passport.
Support comes from ServiceNow. We're for people doing the creative work they actually want to do. That's why this ad was written and read by a real person and not AI. You know what people don't want to do? Boring, busy work. Now with AI agents built into the ServiceNow platform, you can automate millions of repetitive tasks in every corner of your business, IT, HR, and more, so your people can focus on the work that they want to do. That's putting AI agents to work for people. It's your turn. Visit servicenow.com.
Yeah. So I know we'll go into this more at the retreat, but for people who are listening or for people who can't make it, what does this look like for a DNA surprise? So the first letters are recognize.
Yeah, recognize.
What happened?
Allow.
So I got this news. I've opened up my ancestry results.
Yeah.
My dad isn't my dad.
Recognize what is happening for you. What emotions are you feeling? Are you, I'm sure there's multiple, right? And maybe allowing for that strange ambiguity that's happening, possibly recognizing what's happening in your body with that as well, right? Like that's probably a very activating thing to find out, right? And then allow for that to happen. Allow for the grief to really take some time, because I think that oftentimes in our society, we're like, no, you need to get over it already, right? We don't take our time to really, really be in it. And so that's when the investigation comes in. And I'm hoping that I can also help people in this retreat really find out what sort of ways that they can nurture themselves as well around these feelings. And so what I would do is I'll probably be taking everybody through some these exercises, and we can really dive into what you're noticing and finding out how to really feel into your experience.
Yeah. I think it's so true. I mean, yeah, we get a lot of the get over it. It's been a while now, or kind of some of the dismissive things like your dad's still your dad, nothing's changed, all of those kinds of things. I also think that there's a lot of, which maybe ties into the shame that you were saying, but that self-judgment about how we feel. That guilt, personally speaking, guilt about exploring new relationships when you had, I had strong relationships with my raised parents. How can people move through some of the self-judgment and switch to self-compassion when they're looking at their feelings?
Yeah, see, that's the thing.
Yeah.
That's the thing. It's the first thing is naming it. Naming that that's what's happening for us, that we feel shame around these feelings, that we shouldn't be feeling this way. So the thing about shame is it's not actually a useful emotion. Sometimes it is. If you're actually causing harm to another human being, that's a really good emotion to have, right?
Sure.
But if we're having feelings that really we don't have a whole lot of control over, right? Emotions are not exactly something that we can control. That's not a useful tool. And so if we're able to disconnect ourselves and depersonalize the shame, that is where it makes the difference. And so the RAIN practice that I do, we're not going to go deep into our shame response, right?
Right.
We are finding what's underneath it. We are saying, okay, I'm feeling that inadequacy here. I'm feeling that shame here. That doesn't have to be here. And I can put this over here for a little while. What am I feeling underneath this for a little while? And maybe through that, we're actually going to be able to find some self-compassion, because the shame is not going to contribute to any of that. If we can figure out that, oh my gosh, I'm feeling so much grief right now that the person that I love and adore my whole life suddenly isn't actually biologically related to me, then I can actually feel the grief, right? And I don't have to feel any shame that's on top of that. That's useless. That can go away.
Yeah.
But the grief, that has a point.
Yeah. Is it possible to move through the acceptance and integrating something like a DNA surprise trauma without self-compassion?
No, but I think it takes more than that too.
Yeah.
I think it takes being with other human beings too in that. Shame's antidote is compassion, right? From other human beings too. So the self-compassion is part of it, but we need other people. And I think that's what you're doing.
Yeah, that's the goal, right? Is that connection and spending time with people who really get it. I can count myself very lucky that I have a lot of amazing people in my life who have been there to support me through all of this. And no one gets it like people who have been through this experience. The people that I interview on the podcast, the people that I meet online, and so on.
Kristen Neff talks about, she's a researcher in self-compassion. And she talks about 3 ways to kind of get out of that cycle of not self-compassion.
Yeah.
There's 3 ways of getting into self-compassion. And that is mindfulness, the unique human experience. And the third one is self-kindness, right? Speaking to yourself as if you're someone that you love. And I think that unique human experience piece is super important, right?
Yeah.
Self-kindness, fine. Like that can be hard for a lot of people.
Yes.
Mindfulness, that can be hard for a lot of people, but that unique human experience is a biggie, I think.
So the retreat, we're at least going to cover 2. We're going to have that mindfulness, self-compassion piece there. And then that unique human experience with other people who get it. And hopefully we'll be able to help with that kindness part too. That is definitely something that I have struggled with myself, and kind of posing a question to myself, just like, would you talk that way to your friend? Would I talk that way to my daughter?
Yes.
You know, those kinds of things helps me reframe a bit, but definitely still a practice. And speaking of practice, you said that rain is a practice. How often do people find themselves digging that out of their toolbox? I mean, is it something that people could do daily, multiple times a day?
That's a really good question. I think it can be used anytime. And like anything else, it's a good idea to practice when you're not feeling really activated or emotional, right? So even starting out very small and just doing, maybe if journaling is something that you enjoy doing, you can do that at the end of a long day and just writing out what you're noticing. You can also use this as a meditation practice if that's something that you're into, or just checking in with yourself. Like, this is how I'm feeling today. And then when you sort of that becomes easier, it becomes a habit. Like, I can do this within about a few minutes instead of 15. You can start doing this when things really come up for you in the middle of the day. It's just a really nice tool to have in your toolbox.
I'm excited to learn more about it and use it. Can you talk more about what your session will look like with the attendees in May?
I will be taking everybody through the steps of RAIN, what RAIN is all about. This will be a workshop of sorts where you get to really explore each of the steps: recognize, allow, investigate, and nurture. And so we'll take some time with each of these steps so that you can process one of your experiences that you're having at that moment. And so hopefully by the end of my session, you will come away having a deeper awareness of not only the practice of RAIN so that you can use it in your own life, but really have an idea of your experience in that present moment that you're having, and also come away having felt like you've achieved some of that nurturing piece, right?
Yeah.
I think that's the most important part for me is really digging into that N of the rain and nurturing that person that you are, that multifaceted person, and really having a moment of that full experience, the full life experience that I was talking about before.
Well, I can't wait to go over this, to learn some new tools and to share them with other people at the retreat. Do you offer services to people who are outside of the Tucson area, if anyone listening is interested?
Yes, I do. I am a registered nurse, so my licensure is covered in what's called the Compact License Agreement. And so I do offer my services to around 35 states in the US. So I do Zoom calls that way and if you're in Tucson, I see people in person.
Great. And we'll be sure to link all of your information if people are interested in finding your website or anything like that in the show notes. Well, Lindsay, thank you so much for joining me today. Can't wait to see you in May and learn all about rain.
Thanks so much, Alexis. I really had fun talking to you today.
Thanks again to Lindsay for joining me. If learning more about how to nurture yourself through a DNA surprise resonates with you, please join us at the DNA Surprise Retreat, May 4th through the 7th in Tucson, Arizona. Until next time.